Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our 2022 Buyer Insights and Intelligence series. This session is titled Discussion, Meeting Your Buyers Where, When, and How They Want. My name is Claudia Tarico, and I'm the editor of Demand Gen Report. And I will be half of your moderator for this presentation. I'm just going to introduce everyone and then kick things over to our fabulous panel who's going to have an awesome discussion today. But before we begin, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping slides and then we'll kick things off. So for those of you who are new to Demand Gen Report, welcome. We are an online media company publishing everything from daily news, original research, special reports, a weekly email newsletter, and a rich menu of additional resources. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to demandgenreport.com today. And then, of course, find us on social media. You could follow along and share your thoughts and feedback with us on Twitter and even LinkedIn. And you could also use the hashtag BII22. All of our links and handles are right here on your screen, and we look forward to connecting with you on social. I also want to take this time to announce that we are going back to Boston for our B2B Sales and Marketing Exchange. We are so excited to see our entire B2B community in person, and I really hope you can join us this August. For more information and to check out our agenda, visit the B2B SMX website. It's b2bsalesmarketing.exchange. All right, and then for today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. So during this session, you could access pretty much everything that you need right here on this toolbar that we have mapped out on this slide. First and foremost, we encourage you to ask our presenters questions today. To do so, simply click the Q&A widget at the top right corner of your screen. The session is going to run about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll have a few extra minutes following the session. So you could submit your questions using that widget at any time. And then if we don't have time to answer your question live, do not worry. Ask them anyway, and we will follow up via email. And then if you want to see what else we have in store for the series this year, you could access all of the BII sessions on the right of your screen, right under that Q&A widget. And then right below that, you'll find some additional resources that we've made available to you. And today's session is, of course, being recorded, and everyone will receive an archived link to go back and review and share with colleagues. And finally, in addition to joining the conversation online and submitting your questions, please let us know how we're doing. We've put together a very brief survey that will automatically launch when this session ends. You could even pull up, complete, and submit the survey at any time during the session by clicking on the survey icon at the bottom of the toolbar. We actually have it circled on the slide right there, so you can't miss it. So please, before signing off today, take a moment to complete this quick questionnaire. All right, well, now I'm so excited to introduce our esteemed panel today. We have Peter Schroeder of Circle, Karina Owens of Gong, Stephen No of Paddle, and Narosha Methananda of Influ2, who will be your other moderator for this session right after I finish introducing everyone. So Peter leads integrated campaigns at Circle, the creator of the popular stablecoin USDC, with a focus on driving pipeline and revenue for their product portfolio. Collaborating cross-functionally, both within marketing as well as with product and revenue teams, he collaborates with his team to create personalized buying experiences for a mutually identified set of high-value accounts. Karina is an award-winning ABM and growth marketer driving revenue for high-growth B2B SaaS organizations with integrated and multi-channel marketing strategies. No stranger to building and scaling demand gen and ABM functions from the ground up, Karina is skilled at streamlining omni-channel marketing programs and campaigns designed to drive results that directly impact the bottom line. She thrives in customer-centric organizations and is obsessed with creating meaningful experiences and communities for Gong's target audiences. Stephen is currently head of product marketing at Paddle, where he conducts customer and persona research. Previously, he was head of growth at Profitwell, where he ran a demand generation, RevOps, and business development teams. Profitwell was since acquired by Paddle in April 2022. And he, of course, is experienced in using data and insights to drive marketing strategy across a variety of functions. And of course, last but not least, always driven by a strong urge to always be learning, Nerosha is a proud marketing generalist with a career spanning close to 15 years across many marketing disciplines and industries. She recently joined Influ2 as its VP of marketing and is taking on the challenge to build out what the evolution of ABM looks like. In her most recent role, Nerosha was responsible for creating Bambura's distinctive brand and establishing it as the leading global provider of B2B intent data. And prior to that, Nerosha led marketing for PwC Australia's tech consulting practice, dabbled in a little PR and journalism at Power Retail, and gained an interest in digital and data at Experian Hitwise. So obviously, we are in great hands today. This is going to be a really exciting conversation. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and pass things over to Nerosha. Nerosha, all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia, for the intro. And welcome to everyone today who's joining us, and to all of our esteemed panel as well. I'm really excited for the conversation. And since we got such a great introduction, we can jump straight in. Really today is about understanding how Karina, Peter, and Stephen are approaching meeting their buyers where, when, and how they want, and being able to meet the goals of their program. So, I'm just going to jump straight in with our first question. We had a couple of questions that we outlined. What guys are the best ways to understand your buyer, and how are you doing that?
I can jump in. I think that all of us will have a similar initial answer, which is talking to your customer, understanding your prospective customer. But beyond that, I think a lot of success that I've seen has come down to market research, and really strong market research, not only serving the customers we have today, but the customers we want to have tomorrow. Right now I work at Circle, which is a company that's going through this SPAC process to become a publicly traded company. But I've also worked at smaller startups, Series A startups that are still trying to find product market fit. And I think that depending on how much traction you have, should depend on how much weight you put on what your customers are saying today versus what you want to create for the market. Because sometimes you're working for a company that wants to create something new for the market. You're building demand that's not there yet. Your customers don't necessarily always know exactly what they want. I think it's Henry Ford that famously said, if he would have talked to just his customers, he would have built a faster horse, not a car. And so I think that it always comes down to a mix of both, because being a strong brand and being an innovative company means creating things that don't quite exist, but understanding your customers' needs, understanding what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, what value means for them, and creating the lowest friction way for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, and to piggyback off what you said, it's 95% of buyers are not in market at any given time. So it's really crucial that you do focus on how can I engage with those people that are not ready to buy yet. And so what I found to be really successful is to just figure out where are those virtual watering holes where your prospects or your future customers are already living. Where are they consuming content? It can be a little bit of a unscalable process, but I think sometimes you have to do the unscalable before you can scale. So I often frequent LinkedIn. That's where my current audience lives the most, but I also go to different forums like Quora or Reddit, and you'll be amazed at what questions you will see in these different threads and forums, and just coming and showing up and providing value. Not necessarily taking them off the forum, so taking them to like a gated content as an example, but taking what already exists in your marketing materials and offering a solution to the question that they posed. So I think it's really important that you guys, that everybody in B2B today really focuses on where is the audience living right now and how can I show up and provide value right away.
Yeah, and how is that diversified, do you think? You know, there were so few channels and now there's so many, and people are migrating all over the place. So how do you determine where the best place is to engage with your buyer and with your prospects?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really listening to the customer. So a lot of times we will do what I like to call win surveys. So determining after you've closed won an account, you know, where did they go to find information when they were sourcing their project? Where are they consuming content, their own thought leadership? So I think earlier to Peter's point, you really need to make sure that you're always listening to your customer. And so that can be through direct questions and surveying them live, or doing your own market research. But incredibly important that you are always having that feedback loop on with your customers. And those are really key questions that I always ask, especially once we do a look back on how we close won that account.
Right.
I think one thing just to add to, just to almost like step back to, is this is really hard to understand your buyer, especially at the complex SaaS solutions that we're selling. Like, it's almost never one-to-one where we're only talking to one audience or one person about one product. Like, I think everyone here today has a suite of product offerings that we're talking to different buyers. And Circle, for example, we have a B2C product, we have a B2B2C product, we have a B2B product. We're also in the crypto space, and so we're dealing with educating people on the crypto space because there's not mainstream adoption yet. And so, like, also when we're talking about all of these things and like what we're trying, I just want to say, like, all of this is really hard. There's a lot of like segmentation that needs to happen, speaking directly to your buyers across different verticals, across different industries, across different personas. It's all really difficult to do. And so that's just like one thing I just wanted to say too, stepping back, is like, me personally, I think that this conversation is really helpful because I don't have all of the answers. And I think that just talking to people, talking to other industry professionals, seeing what everyone is doing, it's always helpful to be doing more for your customer, doing more for your buyer. But at the end of the day, like, this is hard stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of segmentation, you know, in B2B, you know, customers often are companies, but it's really people who represent buyers. But often when you have multiple people on a buying decision, then you have multiple people, each of whom have different things they care about, have different influence in the organization, who go to different watering holes as well. And so you have to so personas are obviously super important in everything, but also like knowing which persona goes to which watering hole is also super important for getting that market research as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you set it up perfectly for me for the next question. So, you know, the question I want to ask, one thing that we've been, you know, at Influ2 really developing out and really advocating for in market is around buying groups, and really focusing in on the buying groups at your accounts and understanding who they are, you know, how you need to engage them and so on and so forth. And I guess it's a litmus test for me, to the three of you. Do buying groups matter? You know, when you have so many things to do, and as Peter said, it's very complex and challenging. You know, how do they matter, and and if they do, how are you using them currently?
I think for me, segmentation can be as easy or difficult as you make it. I think, like, to directly answer your question, like, yes, buying groups are important, but how you segment it is important, because you can segment by audience, you can segment by vertical, you can segment by industry, you can segment by persona, you can segment by buying stage. And once you start to do multiple of those, like, your audiences multiply and it starts to get out of control pretty quickly. I'm sure that Stephen, being closer to product and product marketing, can attest that like, you never want to go too deep with building out 10, 12, 20 different personas for a suite of different products, because it just gets impossible to manage. Yeah. And so I think it starts with like curbing expectation and then understanding what's important to you. So for us, we start with like a base level. audience segmentation. Then we kind of have engagement score segmentation. And then we also have buying stage segmentation, where we're scraping third-party market data to be able to understand buying intent. I think it's always improving. I think that we're very lucky at Circle that we have a data science team that we can work with, that we can build some of these segmentation solutions in-house. We can work with other vendors and pull from their APIs to build custom data sets and serve custom audiences, but it's an ever-evolving process. And I always come back to like, keep it simple. Like, you can never go wrong keeping it simple and keeping it about the customer.
Absolutely. And in the interest of kind of simplifying, one thing we often do about buying groups is we have often found that, even when there's a large buying committee involved in something, there's very often 1, 2, 3 champions, we would call them, who are pushing forward a discussion. Committees, obviously, it's hard to make a decision with more people who are in a room. So very often it's like a few people who are really pushing the velocity of a deal forward, who you really need to get on your side. And I think kind of once you really get the personas right for who tend to be your champions, that does a lot of the work and helps you really to simplify a lot of the process of getting to that champion.
So yeah, I love that you called that out too. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that another way to that I think about personas is actually matching the personas of your account once those are identified within your own organization as well. So anytime that there's a marketer coming into the deal currently here at Gong, I'm often coming into those calls as well to just echo how I use our own solution and how it makes my day-to-day easier. So I would say never shy away from identifying who are those different personas that you're targeting or going after. Who are they also in your own organization? That peer-to-peer matching can go a long way with really building stickiness at the account. So it's not just dependent on a CAE or an AE at any given time, but you're really surrounding the whole account with people that match and look like them within your own organization as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a interesting approach that I've heard a couple of organizations doing. Is that something that you're broadly doing, or is that something specific to Karina? I'm really curious to hear if anyone else is doing that. I've heard of companies where, they sort of take who's coming in from a prospect perspective, and depending on what their seniority is, they match whoever responds back in the organization. So if you're, a CMO, then you're getting a response back from the CMO. If you're a VP, you're getting a response back from the VP, etc. Is anyone, Stephen, Peter, are you guys adopting that sort of approach as well?
I think we are to a limited extent. I think, for example, in our space, the Profile CEO, Patrick Campbell, kind of knows a ton of people, especially in kind of a tech space. So we very often will kind of leverage his relationships with other execs in order to push a lot of these forward. Yeah. And even outside of that, a lot of the time, even if, for example, I'm trying to get to know what a, say, VP of marketing is caring about, very often I'll go to my head of marketing myself and kind of chat with them, what do you care about? If you were buying this product, then what kind of objections or things would you care about? So it's a useful market research tool, not just on kind of a transactional trying to get specific deals forward.
Right.
I would say we do a good job from a product routing perspective. I wouldn't say we necessarily mirror seniority and job function
right.
from a response perspective. I think that's a really interesting idea. The one thing we do is the marketing team is in Gong, listening to calls every day, every week. And so I will mirror Karina's sentiment there that we love being in Gong and listening to calls too. It's actually, I think that the marketing team should also have seats in Gong, listening to those calls, listening to what customers are saying. That kind of comes back to how you get closer to your customer, is that listening to those calls.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I've been doing a lot more in market conversations, than I was in my previous role. Part of that is being, having a new brand and being on the ground as well. But I guess my, a follow-up question is, do you think that typically it's sales who are in those conversations and driving them forward and seeding them and so on and so forth? Do you think that that's sort of shifting and moving, in terms of buyer expectations and in terms of their behavior?
I certainly do. I think 2020 really accelerated what we're now calling digital selling, right? So it's the entire account is exposed to the buying process more often than not, or at least the main buying committee members. So they have all they need to start the research process well before they, make that form submission to try and talk to you. From party reviews to different communities to online forums, you can't expect that the buyer is incredibly educated, much more so than maybe they would have been a couple of years ago, where we were much more dependent on in-person interactions or maybe third-party analyst research firms. So I've loved this trend of having, more opportunities to expose the account to different members of the committee. So yeah, I think the digital selling is just going to continue, and we're going to keep continuing to broaden what that buying committee looks like and how much an account knows about your company.
Cool. Stephen, Peter, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that to Karina's point, like Gong does an amazing job from an awareness perspective. And so typically, I'm sure when people come inbound to Gong, they have a good understanding of what Gong does, who they are, how they can leverage Gong. I think the challenge that complex software solutions with a pretty niche buyer groups have is that same awareness level and kind of understanding what buying stage maybe a more technical buyer might be. I'm not saying that the Gong buyers aren't technical, but when I think where I'm getting at is the tools today give us more insight into like what buying stage people are in. And so are they even aware of your product? Have they ever heard of your product? Are they considering a similar solution within your space? Are they actually going through the procurement or buying process for a solution that's like yours? These signals help influence activities that maybe you can't get in front of everyone in the world, and maybe you can't have the biggest social media presence in the world, but maybe you can understand what buying stage some people are at. Maybe you can get to the people who understand similar products to you, products in the space, and then maybe you can serve them up relevant messaging based on the segmentation that they have. But that's at least how we think about it for some of our products. But at the same time, we have a B2C product, USDC, which is the fourth largest cryptocurrency in the world, where we want everyone in the world to know about it too. And so we have to segment our different product offerings. We have to think about the goals for each of our products, and we have to serve the potential buyers the relevant message based on where they are in the buying stage. And so there's a lot of like back-end process and technology and thought process that kind of goes into all of that for each segmented group.
Yeah, and I will definitely say that I agreed with everything on Gong. Like, with tools like Gong, there's fewer and fewer excuses to not have, not have all these silos that exist within the organization, even especially kind of comms facing functions like marketing. The other thing I would point out also is that, customers don't really, care that, there's a distinction between like your sales and your marketing team. It's all an interaction with your brand. So if I might use like consumer for example, if like I need to call an airline's customer support and they give me a terrible experience, I don't care that like, that's a different department from say the company that's running the flights. It's all just one bad consumer experience for me. And the same thing matters as much in B2B, if not more, because in B2B, quality of experience and knowing my like specific needs and wants are so much more important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, that what you just said about, people don't care whether you're in sales or marketing or where you sit. I think sometimes it can be a little bit cerebral for us of like, okay, cool, we need to send this from marketing and then sales does this and then someone does this and it becomes so scientific. And at the end of the day, like, you're looking for it to be seamless. And, that takes me into the next question around, we've had some mention of personas and, how important they are in terms of understanding needs and really being able to meet people where they are, which is what the title of the session is. With the personas, where and how are you using insights to be able to map them? Peter, you mentioned that you have a couple of different life stages. How are you using that, and what differentiates a prospect who is at top of funnel or at the first stage of awareness and education versus someone who is further down in the funnel and looking at closing a deal or at the bottom of funnel. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. First, I just wanted to call up Stephen's answer that a bad customer experience is a customer experience, and so that was just such a great answer. It doesn't matter if someone wants to come into Circle to buy USDC or leverage our APIs to implement in their product. Like, serving them a good customer experience takes a company's effort. It takes everyone, really, because everyone at the company is going to have some customer interaction at some point. So that was just a great answer, Stephen. But as for customer journey and kind of customer life cycle, we think that compiling the right data sets is really important. And I already mentioned this, and again, we're very lucky to have a custom data science team, but we kind of bucket it into 3 buckets. It's compiling all of the right data and all of the relevant data. That's both first party that we're collecting from our website, our forms, our product, anywhere else we can collect first party data, and then also collecting third party data. And so leveraging technographic data sets, leveraging things like Zoom info, leveraging really any data sources we can to compile all of the right data sets. Then from there, that's when we're sort of starting to craft our different personas, our different verticals, and then map them to our different product offerings that we have. Then on top of that, we start to layer buying stages and where people are in the buying stage. And that's when we have to push all of that data to all of our systems so we can serve them the right ads, the right buying experience, the right content. And then bringing it full circle, we need to report on all of that data. We need to report on the actions that we take. And we need that reporting to kind of come full circle life cycle back into the segmentation that we have. So we have actual data based on actual action, feeding the data sets that we kind of compile internally. This isn't something that everyone has the luxury to be able to do, because we're using all the softwares we can and we're using people to compile these custom data sets. But when you get it right, like we like to call it one-click marketing, where you get action reports, you get insights, you get detailed summaries of what's happening, and you kind of make like the one-click recommendation that's kind of served up to you. I think that one-click marketing is an ideal state that's kind of like unachievable. It's like nirvana marketing, but that's kind of the state that we aim for and how we try to structure everything.
Yeah, I think for us, it's super important to double down on our raving fans. So we remain absolutely obsessed with the customer experience. And one of the new, like, shiny new intent signals that my sales team is just absolutely obsessed with is something that User Gems actually provides for us, which it allows us to identify previous raving fans and when they're making movement to a new company. So we're very much still in the great reshuffle. So anytime we're able to identify a raving fan, whether that's a power user or whether that's a stakeholder that's moved companies, it's been incredibly helpful for us to accelerate the kind of conversations we're having with our in-cycle opportunities. So I would say anytime you can find something like that, that's just hitting the nail on the head with your sales team, just make sure that you're rallying behind that and providing more opportunities to surface those data points. I always say that marketers, the very successful ones, are often stewards of their data. So something like this, right, surfacing that up at a critical moment can be really powerful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at Paddle, we've made a pretty hefty investment in content marketing. And one thing we found is that, like kind of going along with the funnel idea, is that certain piece of content generate that kind of traffic for us. But the one piece of content that actually generate interest in our products are actually very different. And so what we'll kind of do in that is like not only publish that content, but also use that data to actually figure out, okay, what are the benchmarks? What are the, pieces of information and actionable pieces of information that really kind of drive interest in how do I solve this problem. So I think for us, it's almost like we use content not just to drive traffic, but also as a way of figuring out like, oh, what is the best way to position our product for different elements of a funnel. And we tend to find that really useful because we're learning not just from talking to existing customers, but also to people who are kind of still learning about the problem or, just learning about what exists in the market.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, we've obviously, Stephen, we've worked together in case study, and I'm always impressed at the way that you take and use and work with your sales team to create very good content and very relevant content, and be able to use that to its fullest extent. So. Very familiar with what you're doing. You know, the next question was a little bit of my sarcasm coming through. It's, you know, is insert the current marketing tactic that's currently cancelled actually dead? So I'm going to start with you, Karina, because I know you and I share pretty strong views on this, on things that are getting announced as dead within marketing. Are they actually dead? Is email dead? Is, I don't know, whatever the latest thing that everyone says is dead.
Yes, no, it's something I'm super passionate about as well. I think that there's no true one size fits all marketing approach for any organization. And anytime that we start to find, you know, winning templates, so take, you know, sending a video to a prospect versus just sending an email, right? I think many people would say that approach is dead now too. But I guess I would say that it really depends on your business. The second something is working for one company, thousands others are going to start to apply a similar template, and then that also becomes oversaturated as well. So I think that whoever has the loudest microphone right now to say that a tactic is dead, there's probably something a little bit self-serving on the other end of that and why they're saying that. But just look at your own business, particularly for ABM. I talk to so many marketers that are trying to implement an ABM strategy, and it's definitely a long haul approach. You have to really consider the unique needs of your business, your sales cycle. Also, how are you just set up to support any kind of initiative or strategy? You may not have a full marketing operations team, as an example. So you may need to take that into consideration if you're looking to onboard some new technology. You may not have a inside sales team that is ready to support, you know, a very large outbound campaign that you might be looking to run. So I would definitely say that anytime you see that, just take a step back and always know that you are best suited to serve your company and make the decisions that make most sense for you.
I completely agree. I think that, like, some examples, like direct mail was dead for like 10 years, and now all of a sudden there's like Alice and Sendoso and like huge direct mail companies popping up. Billboards have been dead before. Now like every software company like buys billboards and posts pictures of their billboards and how creative they've been. And so I think that channels and different like marketing fads are kind of like fashion. Like things come back and they circle back and there's cycles. But like I don't think any channel's dead unless it's like Vine or something where it's like literally not there anymore and you can't use it.
Yeah, and I mean Vine's back as TikTok right anyway, right? So yeah, so maybe it's not dead either. And I mean I completely agree. Like nothing really ever dies. I think my own kind of possibly spicy theory of this is that kind of it's not that the channel ever dies, it's that you have the early people who innovate in the channel, then you have a bunch of late adopters who just copy the playbook that everyone else is using, and those are the tactics that tend to be dead on arrival. So the channel itself never dies, but it's just copying the thing that everyone else is doing that is dead.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to look at it, because, you know, you can, the way I sort of put it is you can have a Ferrari, but if you don't know how to drive it, you know, it's useless, right? It's like you can create the best content, but if no one is using it, if no one is reading it, does the tree fall if it's in the forest? Do you hear it fall? It's like that whole sort of proverb. But cool. Okay. Just going to wrap up on our last question. Content. You know, what is working? What's not? There's a lot of diversity of channels. There's a lot of diversity of mediums. You know, I'm a big fan of TikTok. I've been seeing so many things about the metaverse and, you know, where we're going with that. Any final thoughts around that in each of your respective businesses and just across the industry broadly?
For me, you go ahead, Karina.
I was just going to say, I think for me, it is content distribution internally. So I think that it's so fun to explore TikTok as an avenue and maybe another social media trend. But I think more often than not, a lot of companies are just missing, how do I internally distribute our content? So how do I make sure that sales knows where to find this new really amazing piece of third-party validation or this new report that we just released? And then do they know how to use it? And are they using it effectively? So I'll even set up trackers in Gong myself to see, hey, did this land with my sales rep? Are they communicating the value of this content when they're live with the prospect? Are we hitting the mark? Is it resonating with them when they hear how we pitch it? So it's not as sexy as a channel or as fun to explore, but it's so crucial. And marketers that focus on an effective internal just content distribution strategy are far away going to win in many ways.
I completely agree. I have two things to add to that. One, measuring content being used. I think it really just comes down to, like, is the content being used? One, because content just gets overwhelmed with so many requests, and two, so often that content just doesn't get used. It gets shelved. It was just like a random idea. And so one, using tools like Gong or Seismic or anything to be able to measure if the content is being used and if it's being performed. The second thing, and this is like one of my favorite sayings for content marketing, is like content marketing is 20% creation, like 80% distribution, like not just distribution internally, but distribution externally, like making sure your content gets the legs that it needs, make sure that it's getting broken up into smaller bites so people can digest it and click through if they like want to learn more, like really understanding full scope the content you're creating, how to distribute it, how to get people there, and then what the goal for that content is. Time and time again, I just see content like getting created with no purpose, not getting distributed and not getting used. And I think that that's a sad thing when content marketing is actually a really powerful channel when it's leveraged right. As you can see at Gong, who does it, better than anyone.
Yeah, I completely agree that internal and external distribution are important. I would just advise also that you really get your sales team's input on a lot of this, because they tend to be pretty hard-nosed about whether or not something's going to be valuable. Marketers, we often fall into the trap of creating content for ourselves and not for customers, but sales rarely falls into that trap.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I said, I think Karina's found a raving fan in Peter, which is great during this session. And also, I'm going to harken back and challenge that. Challenge, that to use Peter, the Henry Ford example. If he asked people what they needed at the time, they would have said faster horses, not cars. So is it the same with sales? If you ask them what they need, are they going to tell you what they need now versus, and this comes full circle back to, Peter, what you were saying at the start, in terms of understanding what your buyer needs now and being able to, almost be able to predict and meet them for the future as well. So is that, I don't know, any disagreement? What are your thoughts?
I think there's two thoughts. Like, my knee-jerk reaction is, like, if you just ask sales at a surface level what they want, you're going to be creating a lot of one-pagers. But I think at the same time, like, I see integrated marketing, account-based marketing, revenue marketing, like an extension of the revenue team. Like, we're really there to help each other and serve each other. So at the same time, it really takes intentional forging of deep relationships with the sales team, like getting invited to their sales calls, getting invited to their forecasting calls, like really being in the trenches with them to actually understand their actual needs and have an opinion on what they do need. Because at the same time, at the end of the day, we're marketers, we're not selling, they're sellers, they're not marketing. And so we need to understand each other to really create exactly what they need and what will like provide value to them at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we're all kind of saying, Steve and Peter, and is that it matters to get their input. It's important to build that relationship so you do have that foundation of trust. And it's important that they then trust you to also make the right decision on what is that content? What am I putting inside of it? So yeah, I think that those are all really important notes. And at the end of the day, if they can trust you as a marketing organization to make the right decision, you've really done a really great job of establishing that relationship and sense of trust.
Cool. Stephen, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say, the point of the one pages that Peter made is absolutely correct. If you ask your sales team what they want, they're going to be whatever I can close this quarter. But kind of taking a more first principles approach. If you were Ford, you'd be asking, am I selling fast horses or am I selling transportation? Which is actually how those companies are repositioning themselves now. So taking a first principle approach to what problem is my customer actually asking me to solve, as opposed to what product am I trying to sell, tends to be a much more resonant approach.
It's a good disqualifier too, right? If you really have a good differentiation standpoint, I mean, maybe you find out that that's not really a good fit, and then they can go find another solution that is a better fit for them. So I think it's always good to know, hey, this is what they might come back with, but stay firm in your positioning too. If you're not a great fit, then cut the ties, move on.
Right. Yeah, fair point. Fair point. I think that it's a strong company that's able to do that. We often get stuck in that trap. Cool. Yes, we do this. And then, you have to service the nightmare on the end. Anyway, right. We have a quick time for some questions. Claudia, I'm going to throw it back to you to see what we've got from the audience.
Yeah, we definitely did get some awesome questions in. Before I get to those, thank you all so much. That was an awesome conversation, really, really great insights. And I hope the audience enjoyed it and got a lot of notes there. And then one more thing before I get to those questions, please take our survey. It'll launch once the session ends, or you could click that survey icon and fill it out really quick during our Q&A right now. So please, before you sign off today, take this quick questionnaire. And final reminder, if we do not get to your questions live, do not worry. We will definitely follow up with all the answers via email as well. All right, first question. What's the best way to set up process and operations?
I think that's a loaded question because it's so unique to teams, the resources that they have at their disposal. I hate to give the answer like it depends, but I mean, it really depends. It depends on the team you have, the tech you have in place, the budget you have, the audience that you're going after. It's so subjective. And also, sorry if you could hear my dog in the background, but yeah, that's my not great answer is like it really depends. But I think asking those questions, taking inventory of all the resources you have at your disposal, and thinking about your goals, and then also like a lens that I like to kind of view it from is you have descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And this is kind of how we work towards that like one-click marketing that I kind of talked about. And so it kind of starts with descriptive. You're getting a lot of qualitative feedback. And then you move to more like diagnostics and predictive, where you're starting to get quantitative feedback and you're able to implement that into your process. And then you're starting to get to a predictive state of marketing. From like a general framework perspective, that's how I like to think about it. But at the end of the day, every company is so unique in how they set it up. Someone might have a better answer than that.
I took it in two ways. I think if you're looking at technology, I think most companies aren't taking a holistic approach to how should I implement this. So I think I'm always pushing on my team to say, hey, if you're looking to do something for your objective, take into account what are the other objectives of people that might also down the line want to use this software as well. It's going to really help you to fine tune not only how to pick the right solution for your company, but also how am I going to roll this out and adopt this later. It can really help you to get some initial champions too when you think about rollout. Additionally, I think for ABM in particular, I really harp on SLAs as it relates to the specific campaigns and programs we're launching. And in order to launch those service level agreements, I survey anybody that's going to take part in that, which very often is inside sales, it can be product, it can be customer success team. And I make sure that we're all aligned to, hey, when we invest this much or when we launch this, this is how we're going to follow up, and we're going to do so in this time frame, and this is the report that we're all going to be using. This really helps the entire organization to rally around any kind of initiative and ensure that you have one voice across your organization. So this is another way I took that question as well.
One of the, sorry, I was just add to that. Oh, sorry, Pete. Sorry, Stephen. Just really quickly, I was going to say, for me, process operation starts with data and having a clean data set. And I think that is a very, very big underestimated, an important part of anything in a business. So that's my 2 cents worth. Stephen.
Yeah, I was gonna. So this may be a very marketing ops, RevOpsy answer, but it does apply to not just data, but also say content strategy, for example, which is that the thing to be worried about is kind of letting the process become the endpoint, as opposed to letting the experiences you're trying to create, the answers you're trying to get, become the endpoint, the actual end kind of deliverable. So number one is always keep that in mind, and don't be afraid to kind of do this iteratively, because a lot of the time what I've seen is that, like, you know, you might be confident that, like, oh, I know exactly what the perfect solution looks like and I can deliver that perfect solution the first time around. That never actually happens. There are always problems you never thought about. There's additional things you need to think about. So what I usually recommend as far as like process and tech, and even like kind of say positioning, for example, is find a way to like kind of test quickly and iterate, because you'll find that like you actually get a better sense of what the best solution looks like from that.
All right. All right. I think we have time for one more. I'm combining two, so it might be a little long, but do you have any tips for downturn? And do you have any tips to keep customers engaged during the downturn, fear or education?
Yeah, I would just say that be careful to not sound like everybody else. I think that we're potentially heading down the road of copying our 2020 playbook and how we do outreach and how we pitch the product, et cetera. So be careful to make sure that what you're communicating to your prospective buyers is unique to you. And otherwise, I think it could just get very easily lost in the noise. And then finally, I think just be empathetic. I think that is a really big bonus to what we've experienced over the past couple of years, is that the word empathy is no longer something I'm having in my private, personal conversations. It's something that the B2B community is having at large. So just remember to be empathetic. And then I would say over-communicate internally. We've got, probably all of us here on this line have aggressive goals, and we're going to be faced with increased challenges. So just remember to over communicate and voice your thoughts and feedback often.
Yeah, building on that, I think the communication is key internally and externally. For us, being in the crypto space, which is highly volatile, it all comes down to integrity. Like, integrity is everything to us. Like, we've built our reputation on integrity, and so during the down cycle, that however long it continues, if it continues, we will continue to be as transparent as possible, kind of lead the industry in integrity, take the high road, and that's kind of the approach that we've taken from the beginning as a company, and that's kind of what's gotten Circle to the place it is today in an industry where you know, you have a little bit of everything. And so that's really like what I would harp on. And then the other thing would be just like keep building and keep delivering value. Like, down cycles are a great time to be innovative. They're a great time to kind of put your head down and build things that you might not have been able to when you have to keep up with all your other competitors and when you have to compete with a lot of people that are rising in the industry. It's kind of like one of the rare, quiet, like slow times where you can really put your head down, be innovative, and try different things.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, as to Corinne's point, like, empathy is extremely important. Like, people are going through some rough times right now, and kind of acknowledging and connecting with that is super important. One thing I will say also is that you know, we have a lot of benchmarking data on like the SaaS space, and an interesting thing we're kind of seeing is that like sales for the industry as a whole are not necessarily going down, but we're seeing churn go up a lot. And that to me communicates that there's a lot of reevaluation of like what parts of like say a tech stack or what solutions are actually driving value for people. So really reevaluating are we actually driving value for people? Are we actually justifying people continuing to work with us? Is something that's going to become a very hard but very necessary question.
Yeah, just to close out, I think empathy, integrity, and value, okay. I will speak directly to the fear in education. I think for me personally, I think we all, there's enough going on in the world to create fear and uncertainty. And I think when I get marketed to in that way, from that perspective, like, I don't want to hear any more of that. I want to hear how you're going to help me or you're going to make my life easier. And that's probably what I'm going to respond to rather than you telling me, it's, the world is ending and the sky is falling and so on and so forth. And I need your solution right now. That is not helpful in the slightest. So final 2 cents from me. Claudia.
Awesome. I love it. Really great answers, everyone. And just an awesome conversation. I love presentations like this, so I really hope the audience enjoyed it as well. So yeah, thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to chat with our audience. And of course, thank you to our audience for tuning in. You can check out the next session. It's actually coming up in just a few minutes. So grab some coffee, do a little stretch or something, and then join us at 1 p.m. Eastern for Feedback is Fuel, Use Insights to Supercharge Your Marketing Strategy. That's a wrap on us. So thank you again, everyone, and take care.